You're listening to Experience Imagination, a themed entertainment design podcast presented by Falcon's Creative Group. Every episode, we discuss a new topic with a panel of creative professionals. Hi, I'm Cecil McPurry, President and Chief Creative Officer of Falcons.
Welcome to another episode of Experience Imagination. I'm your host, Audrey DeLong. I love today's topic. I think one reason I love it so much is the quality and depth of our guests. I'll be joined by industry experts and thought leaders who have decades of experience working with consumer products and intellectual property, and more specifically, boosting the profile of IPs and attracting even more fans to them through retail efforts. First up is a conversation with Simon Phillips and Gary Pope. This is a good time to mention that Simon is a new Falcons Beyond board member. We are thrilled to have him. As you'll hear in that segment, Simon's experience in the industry is lengthy and extraordinary, so he brings extremely valuable insight to the Falcons Beyond team. Simon also currently serves as Managing Director of Global Consumer Products at Moonug Entertainment, the company behind CoComelon, Blippi, and others. Gary Pope is the co-founder and CEO of Kids Industries, the world's only full-service strategy and activation agency that specializes in the global family market. Next up, we'll speak with Ken Faier and Kevin Mowrer. Ken is the founder, president, and CEO of Epic Story Media. Kevin is the founder and co-CEO of Huge Play. Last year, Falcons Beyond tapped Epic Story Media to support our growth of the Kathmandu IP, and Kevin will play a big part in that as a story consultant. After that interview, I'll talk to our own Director of Retail Strategy and Implementation, Rebecca Duncan, who has been very busy developing the merchandise line to support Falcons Beyond's IPs. Let's get started. It is my pleasure to welcome Simon Phillips, board member of Falcons Beyond and the managing director of Global Consumer Products at Moonug Entertainment. Hi, Simon.
Hi, how are you?
Doing great, thank you. And hello to the co-founder and CEO of Kids Industries, Gary Pope.
Hello, Audrey.
Hey there. So let's get right into this. It's going to be an interesting discussion. Thanks again for joining us. Simon, two of your highest profile roles were Executive Vice President and General Manager of the Walt Disney Company, EMEA, and President of Marvel Entertainment International. So first of all, wow. I'm sure you were very busy with those, but tell us a little bit about what those posts entailed.
Initially, my role at Marvel was focused on expanding the consumer products business around the world and making sure that we were able to translate all the amazing comics into multiple different languages and then create the very best licensed product. Quickly, my role expanded into setting up Marvel's global animation business, Marvel's global gaming business. And Marvel led me to Disney because we sold Marvel to Disney in 2009 and then was given the opportunity to take over in Europe, Middle East, and Africa a number of different business units and run those, at which point in 2018, I said that it was time to spend my time with my family and spend my time investing in businesses that would give me the opportunity to bring what I had learned at Disney and at Marvel to new and exciting areas of opportunity.
Yeah, I mean, that's a good segue into what you're doing with Falcons Beyond, because I've seen that you have said Falcons Beyond is playing in an unlimited sandbox. Describe what you mean by that.
It's fascinating with Falcons Beyond because we're starting off with a physical experience, a physical manifestation of intellectual property, and then take that into the digital world, be that gaming, be that content, be that animation, movies, or consumer products. We're starting from a point that really only the likes of Disney have been able to do before, which is where you start with something that is real, and then you're able to go out into the imaginary. And that's incredibly exciting. And I can't think of many companies that have that ability. It's really just a handful. It's the likes of Disney and Falcons.
Very cool. I want to talk to Gary too, because Simon, you touched on consumer products, which is, of course, what this podcast discussion is about. Gary, as part of kids' industries, I know you've experienced this quite a bit and learned a lot in your process, but in what way do consumer products help build and expand a brand?
What's really interesting is that Falcons actually breaks the mold in many ways from what would be a very straightforward answer, because a consumer product gives an individual a slice of that entertainment that they identify with, a narrative that they love, characters that they can engage with, and enables them to bring it home and to have a sense of well-being, of ownership, of participation in that IP that they've enjoyed so very much. And of course, what that does is that creates a space in one's mind where there then a fandom exists. And so, being able to see something on screen or experience it physically in a park and then having a piece of that to take home means that you are connected in immeasurable ways to that branded proposition.
Yeah, and you're connected, you're more engaged. Let's talk about the engagement factor. And this is really a question for both of you. How does a toy or a book or a game fit in with the overall engagement someone has with an IP? Is their experience with that product just as important as their experience at a physical location? Simon?
Absolutely. I called it the circle of life. I'll go back to my days at Disney and the Lion King and the circle of life. If the product that you're buying, that you're engaging with, doesn't enable you to extend the story that you have been engaged with, then the product's failed in its mission. And all too often, if that product doesn't meet the expectation, you'll lose interest in the IP. Mm-hmm. So it's incredibly important that the content drives you to consume the right product, and you buy that right product, you engage in that content and that franchise more, and then they'll consume more content. So it is that circle of life. Everything has to work incredibly well together.
And Gary?
We learn by doing. Through the act of doing, we absorb sensorial cues, sight, sound, touch, taste, whatever, and we interpret those into meaning. And if we like that, then actually we start to pay more attention to it. And if we pay attention to it, we make a memory. And a memory is like it's a thing that lives in a filing cabinet in your brain, and you can open that filing cabinet whenever you want, and you can recall that thing. Now, if you learn about that thing in a three-dimensional immersive experience, that is infinitely more powerful in making memories. The impact of that immersive experience on their propensity to engage beyond that experience in the consumption of consumer products is immeasurably more.
Interesting. How do you create synergy between the entertainment brand that people may see on television or experience in a movie theater or at a park and what they buy online or at a store?
It has to work together. And what I mean by that is that when you're planning your consumer product strategy, you need to be doing it in conjunction with the team who are creating the content. So everything works harmoniously, everything works together. You can't work in a siloed environment. The consumer products is an extension of the content, and it has to be seen by that. And the people who get it right are the people who really understand that consumer products extend that content experience, and as a result of that, engage more in the content.
Let's get into talking about kids' industries, because this is something interesting I was looking at your website, Gary. You've trademarked the term forefoot thinking.
Yeah.
Tell us about that. How does it dovetail with consumer products?
If you want to create anything for children, you need to be able to see the world as they see it. And forefoot thinking is three sciences. The psychology, as I've already alluded to there, you want to make anything for children, you need to understand exactly what they can cope with at any developmental stage. And I say developmental stage because no two children are ever identical. We all go through exactly the same developmental stages, but we do it at different rates. So understanding what those stages are is very, very important. The second part of forefoot thinking is understanding biology, the biology of a child. You'll be surprised how many toy companies don't understand the level of pressure that a child needs to press on top of a wheelie toy to make it go forward. we understand the biomechanics of a child. We understand the taste buds of a child. We understand how children see in order that we can flow that into the ideas that we develop and the plans that we make. And the last thing, and probably the most important thing actually, is sociology. And sociology is important because the child lives right in the middle of our society. And around that child sits the primary carer. And around that primary carer sits the wider family, the extended family. Around the extended family sits the community. And around the community sits society. And actually, these concentric rings of protection stop most things getting to the child. And our job as Kids Industries, and work that Simon and I have done together on a number of occasions, is to take our clients' hands and work all the way through those protective concentric rings to reach the child in the middle. But we mustn't upset anybody along the way, because as soon as we do that, then brand trust goes. So we put great store in understanding the sociology that the modern family lives in.
Yeah, most definitely. All right, well, Simon, Gary, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you. It was a pleasure.
Thanks, Audrey. That was really nice.
It's time to welcome Ken Faier from Epic Story Media and Kevin Mowrer from Huge Play. Hey, guys.
Hey there.
Hey, nice to be here.
All right, Ken, in general terms, walk us through what Epic Story Media does for its clients.
I launched Epic Story Media with a real vision to build franchises for children around the world. I've been in the kids entertainment space for over 20 years, exec producing many shows and franchises with product extensions and really building audiences. And I really wanted to create an infrastructure around creators and creative vision. And that is for developing original IP, but also for working with other clients and brands to help them build their IP into franchises that really live in a 360 world. So we've built out a great senior management team with different divisions that execute different iterations of that content, whether it be gaming, linear content, short form content, live experiences, etc. So that is what we've built. And really we scale around each opportunity.
Okay, cool. So tell us what you specifically will be doing with the Kathmandu IP in addition to everybody else that's working with you.
This is a very fascinating and exciting opportunity. So for Kathmandu, we're looking to work with Eric Calderon, head of creative, and the entire team at Falcons to really build out and extend the franchise into as many touch points as possible. So that will include linear content, gaming, trading card game, and content related to that. So every piece of content has other content that will derive from that, including working with fans as they go to the park, leave the park, and find the property on different platforms. So that'll be a combination of traditional broadcast, subscription video on demand platforms, advertising video on demand platforms such as YouTube and others, and really looking to take that to a global level. So really is trying to fuel what Falcons Beyond is doing, specifically with this IP. And that's the exciting part of building out this franchise, is that it's still at a ground level, but it already has a relationship with its audience. And our goal is to really dive in, work with the team, and as we have, up to date, and ensure that we're partnering with all the right platforms and other partners that might be out there.
Yeah, I mean, I could see how it can get massive and kind of almost difficult to wrangle everybody that's involved. One of the brains that we're going to talk to right now is Kevin. I know you've created and produced and collaborated on a lot of entertainment projects over the years. So what interests you most about this industry, and why did you decide to establish your own company?
For quite a number of years, I ran all of Hasbro's R&D worldwide across all of the categories, and was very excited and very lucky to be able to get to work on everything from Magic the Gathering card games to Atari games to publishing and the play products themselves, the extremely sophisticated electronic goods. In addition, I'm also the person who founded their original entertainment division and ran that for its first 10 years of its existence, and was lucky enough to be able to relaunch Transformers, My Little Pony, G.I. Joe, get their entire library moving into the marketplace. And I looked around and said, as much as there's some marvelous toy companies out here, I can't point at any of them and say, there is the toy company of the 21st century. So I clean sheeted the approach to Huge Play. We are a direct-to-fan company. We make products that are very sophisticated, have a lot of AI in them. We really focus on properties and how people engage with the IP.
So talk to the unique opportunity maybe that Kathmandu has in the play industry.
Part of what's unique about the age that we're in is the millennial parents really see themselves as friends to their kids. And the kind of engagement the family is looking for are things that they can do together and individually. When we look at Kathmandu and look at this as a family site-based piece of entertainment that is driven by adventure, and that adventure has doors in and characters and places to go and realms. It is a huge world property, but it really has all those doors into it that cuts across the generations. And that 360 engagement is literally driven by the story itself and being very aware that you have different people showing up to engage with your property.
Mm-hmm. Ken, your thoughts?
Developing a franchise and a property that has all of the qualities that Kevin talked about, and that is absolutely core to Kathmandu, requires creative thinking that goes beyond a single lane. So Kathmandu, with the breadth of audience that it currently serves and over time will serve, we have to be thinking about all of those different age groups to ensure that we have that excitement for each of them delivered potentially at different age ranges, different targets, but also appropriate that if a young audience member is seeing some of these pieces of content, that it's still safe. And that's a challenge. That's one of the opportunities, but it's also the challenge in the property, but it's very exciting.
Yeah, you touched upon the different lanes and entertainment. There's media. You can go to a theater and see Kathmandu content. You can watch it on television. You can go to a brick and mortar place. There's the hospitality arm, of course. I mean, when it comes to all of these different avenues, consumer products has this very wide arena. So I'm kind of curious. We could start with Ken on this one. Is there any one specific area you're most enthusiastic about?
There's elements of some lanes that will be really exciting to work potentially with Huge Play to develop products that are much more sophisticated, and how it potentially sews in some of these other lanes together. There's mass market product eventually. You need to have a broad audience for that, and it's typically younger. So toys will definitely be focused at the right time at a younger audience, but there is that older audience and collectors that do engage with different types of products that might be at higher price points with more innovation in it, more connectivity potentially to gaming experiences. We live in that digital world where kids want things and teens want things. As soon as they experience something, they kind of know what they want. And it's kind of an ongoing, almost to use a video game term, a live operations team approach to listening to the community. And the data that comes out of the experiences at the park are super important. And some of the innovations that Falcons has created to offer fans an ability to build their own avatars, so to speak, at the parks and beyond, and take that home. So I'm excited about all the different lanes that are out there when it comes to consumer products. And it's not just toys, it's going to be lots of other iterations of how you engage that fan base.
Right. I do want to get Kevin's take, but a little bit different lens this time on that same question. It's such a unique opportunity that we talked about with Falcons Beyond, but what does it mean to create inclusive products?
Really at the very front of how you get that done is the IP itself. And it means that when you develop the story, you definitely want to make it so that many different audiences can watch it and can feel empowered by it. It doesn't mean that you have to check a whole bunch of boxes and make sure that absolutely everybody is up there on screen, but it does mean having a strong sensitivity to you're making a property for as wide an audience as possible, and people want to feel like they can enter that story. So who the characters are, the cultures they're coming from in the story, the ideas that each one of them represent, what their personalities are, and what it is they're trying to achieve. All of those things, when you bring them together, don't just create the story, they create inclusivity.
All right, guys. Well, this was a lot of fun and very insightful. Thanks for joining us, Ken Faier.
Thank you very much for having me. Very excited to continue diving in and building this experience for the world. We're very excited about it. So thanks for having me.
Thank you, Ken. And Kevin, thanks to you as well.
Thank you. This has been a great pleasure and an extremely exciting project to be working on with very, very talented people.
Excellent. Thank you so much for that. All right, it's time to bring in Rebecca Dunsworth from our own team. Thanks for making the time to join us, Rebecca.
Thank you for having me.
So, as the Director of Retail Strategy and Implementation, what do your day-to-day tasks look like?
Well, it has been determined by people who walk past my desk that I do have the funnest job in the office. So my day-to-day, I am developing the merchandise line to support our IP, with my most pressing focus being the Kathmandu Park in Punta Cana,
right.
And that opens in November. So my day-to-day, I work with our vendors to source the products that we decide we want to carry. I'm partnering with our artists and the vendors' artists to get the appropriate art to product, determining how much of each product we need to support the various shops and our e-commerce site, and also the logistics of delivering, warehousing, distribution of all the product. And I've also added that fun layer of space planning, the physical locations, and I get to have input on the interior design and the fixturing that will house all the products.
Oh, that's right. You have a background in interior design, don't
I do.
you? Okay, so that must help a lot.
Yeah, my business background is in retail and my education background is in interior design. So I've been able to combine the two in this role, and that's what makes it so much fun.
Oh, man, don't you have it made in the shade? So let's talk about the Kathmandu Park. And you mentioned it opening later this year. How important is it to define the target audience and using that as an example?
So target audience is 100% critical. You can have the most beautiful merchandise line, but if you're aiming it at the wrong target, then it's going to completely fall flat. So if we're looking at all of the IP, it's most notable that our target audience changes across our IP. Mm-hmm. So even with the characters in the Kathmandu Park, we have a target audience for the parks, but then as that becomes more gaming and as that becomes AVOD, that target audience changes. So we have to make sure that our products are catering to the right audience as it evolves.
Okay. Can you give us any insight into right now, like a little sneak peek about what kind of products might be at Kathmandu Park?
We have a lot of different kind of products at Kathmandu Park. So we're doing an apparel line. We're also doing a toy line, of course. We'll have some plush for a little bit younger audience. We do have a very cool steampunk vibe going on there. So that's going to play through in some accessories and some bags and some home decor. Of course, we have your great tourist stuff too. We have your beach towels. We have your coffee mugs. We have your pins and your lanyards. So we have a lot of the this more souvenir items as well.
Okay, great. Sounds like fun. So I want to talk about the blog you wrote for our website. It's about retail strategy, of course. And one of the things you talk about is the various forms of retail and how they help build a connection to the brand. Walk us through the dynamics of that.
We face our consumers in very different formats. So we have our podcasts, we have our blogs, we have our parks, we have our website, we have our gaming, we have our media. So we are touching our consumers in many, many different ways. And we work to ensure that our brand message is consistent across all of those, and it's representative of who we are, but most importantly, it's true to our purpose. So making sure that tangible memory that you take with you is reflective of who we are as a company.
Okay. So, obviously there are a lot of considerations. When companies roll out consumer products, they have a lot to think about. So just talk to us about some of those.
We're very unique in how we approach our product line because we interact with our audience very unique ways.
Right.
So through our physical attractions, our gaming, and our media, our consumer line crosses both physical and virtual so that your interactions in all your formats, you can have that tangible memory, and that tangible memory is not necessarily something you can hold in your hand. Sometimes it can be just something that's on your app. So we have to approach it understanding that we touch our consumer in so many different ways.
All right, Rebecca, when designing products for children, there's a lot to consider. How have those considerations changed over the last 2 decades or so?
Designing for children used to be concerned with safety. You had to, pajamas had to be in fireproof fabrics, and you couldn't have any small parts in your toys that they could choke on. Those, of course, are still important today, but more important is in development as well. So before, toys just had play factor. And now not only do they have play factor, but it's also a developmental factor. So you'll see so many products that are leading the way right now are STEM or STEAM products. And it always talks about the development of the child as opposed to just the entertainment of the child.
Yeah, I think I remember, like, when I was young watching cartoons, there was a very clear delineation between a commercial that was for boys and a commercial that was for girls.
Absolutely.
And it's kind of blurred now.
Right.
Why is that?
We've learned that, yes, boys will, given no other direction, if you put a doll and a car in front of them, they will probably go towards the car. But we don't want to limit them and say you can't play with that doll, or or the girl can't play with the car. So I think understanding that developing doesn't have to be based on gender, and it's all about learning and developing that child. And on top of that is more ensuring that they aren't put in a silo and that they get to choose what they are interested in.
Right. Okay. So we're going to talk about, back in the day again. So kids like me, I'd watch a cartoon, mom would buy something like an action figure or a miniature doll or whatever that represents the character that I'm seeing on the cartoon. But it was completely up to my imagination to bring that story to life using just like little figurines. So now we have the digital space. So talk to us about what opportunities were born out of that trend. And then I'd like to hear your thoughts about the future of consumer products.
Consumer products in the digital space involves extending that experience. So you don't have to just use your imagination. You can, of course, but you can take that with you now. So in our parks, you just experienced an attraction and you have the high score.
Nice.
But then 2 days later, your app lets you know that your score was just bested by somebody else. So you can practice on your device, and then you can go back to the attraction and give it another run because you were just told what was going on. So it's immersive. It's being completely in that space at the time, and also being able to take it with you. One of the fun things that we're working on right now is you're in one of our merchandise shops and you buy this great t-shirt that says Game On. And then you scan the code on it and it goes into your app and your avatar is now wearing the same shirt. So that's where we're going in the future. And, you look at NFTs and you look at how everything is evolving in the virtual space, is how much is even going to be physical and tangible in the future. And there are those balances between the physical and the virtual. And that's what we're trying to balance it all out.
All right. Well, it was great to get all your thoughts on this topic. Really fascinating.
Thank you so much for having me.
Those were really insightful interviews. I certainly learned a lot, and I hope you did too. Thank you again to all of our guests, Simon Phillips, Gary Pope, Ken Faier, Kevin Mowrer, and Rebecca Dunsworth. And thank you all so much for listening. Please join us again next time for another episode of Experience Imagination.
Thank you for listening to Experience Imagination, a Falcons Creative Group production. If you enjoyed this episode, please subscribe to the podcast and share with your friends. To keep up with our latest news, visit us on the web at falconscreativegroup.com and follow us on LinkedIn, Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. If you have any questions, comments, or ideas for future episodes, please email us at podcast@falconscreativegroup.com.